This is the Louie T Network. Hey, either you're outside or you're
in the lab room.
Who else could it be but me, your me, Louie T? Welcome, you are in the lab room. Of course, I am your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. NFL free agency. Let me be the first to say, Happy New Year! It's the new league year in the National Football League, and it's been the craziest new year I've ever seen. We're talking trades, we're talking players going all over the place. I've never seen so many trades before in my entire life as a fan watching the National Football League. A lot of teams, and this salary cap being inflated and going up another 8% or so, another 10 million from last year's 10 million raise is giving every team an opportunity to get in on the fun. And so a lot of players are changing teams. And so we're going to go through this list quickly. I'm not listing any money. I'm just talking strictly players and teams. And so we're going to try to do this as quickly as possible. There's so many names. I'm going to forget a few. It does not matter. We're going to cover as much ground as possible. So I'm going to drill it, kill it, and y'all going to feel it. You ready? Let's go. So we start with the big fish, Darrelle Revis. Patriots probably weren't going to pick up that $20 million option, and they didn't. And so Revis was on the free agent market once again. What's new? And so I told you that the Chiefs and the Jets were hot and in heavy pursuit, and the Jets got their man. He said he never wanted to leave. The Jets said they never wanted him to leave. And so that marriage was rekindled. He's back in New York with the Jets. Kendall Langford is now an Indianapolis Colt. After that Rams defensive line got crowded, he got kicked out. He's now an Indianapolis Colt. Brooks Reed, this Atlanta Falcons team looking to get more physical up front, looking to get more pressure on the quarterback. Brooks Reed going to come in, help them at the linebacker position from the Texans, now in Atlanta. You go to Frank Gore. I love what the Indianapolis Colts are doing. And he had this whole change of heart. I told you that he was signing with the Philadelphia Eagles. Instead, he opts out of that and goes to Indianapolis in that power running game. I think he's going to fit in well with what the Colts want to do, and I think that's a great fit for Frank Gore. Really a great fit for both parties involved. Colts get the running back they need and desire. Frank Gore gets to go somewhere where he's going to have a legitimate shot at winning a Super Bowl. A.J. Hawk, no longer a Green Bay Packer, finds a new home in Cincinnati with the Bengals. You move on to Michael Orr. He now is a Carolina Panther after just getting to Tennessee last year and signing a brand new deal. Titans realized they made a mistake, cut bait, and now he's in Carolina. Don't know if he's going to solve the Carolina Panthers' offensive line issues, but he's going to give it a go. You go to Malcolm Smith. Remember, he was the Super Bowl MVP 2 years ago? Didn't hear a peep from him last season in Seattle. He's now going to get a chance to make a mark as a starting linebacker in this league, most likely with the Oakland Raiders. We'll talk a little bit more about the Raiders later on. Rodney Hudson, another acquisition by this Raiders football team, probably their biggest acquisition to date. They were supposed to make a big splash. Again, we'll talk about the Raiders later. He's coming over from Kansas City, so it's a double whammy. You take away from a divisional rival and add to your football team. Twice as nice for the Oakland Raiders getting Rodney Hudson to come and play the center position. Trent Cole going to the Colts. Again, Colts need pass rush. Sometimes we can forget that coming back soon will be someone that has been a huge influence on that Indy defense for a long time, and we don't know how he'll respond from tearing his ACL, but they need all the help they can get along that defensive line at the linebacker position because they haven't been generating enough pass rush. I like the young kid Jonathan Newsom, but they're going to need a lot of pass rush, and so you go out and get a guy like Trent Cole, and maybe he'll be able to come in. He's getting up there in age. The Eagles saw fit to cut bait with him. He'd been a veteran, someone that you thought would probably wrap his career up in Philadelphia. That was not the case. So now, can he come in and help them get some pressure on the quarterback? And if he's able to come in and help, if Robert Mathis can come back and get back to form, maybe the Indianapolis Colts will be able to start generating the pressure that they need on the defensive side of football to help that group out. You move on to Jeremy Parnell. Here's a guy, and everybody on that Cowboys offensive line has been praised and lauded for their performance last year, and he was one of the unsung heroes coming off the bench when Doug Free went down with an injury. He stepped in, helped this Cowboys offensive line move right along, and so everybody's getting paid along this offensive line, including backup tackle Jeremy Parnell signs a big-time deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars to be their right tackle. We'll see how that works out for both parties involved. There, you go to Denor Searcy. Here's a young safety, made a very big impact on the Bills defense for the last couple of years. He now moves on to the Tennessee Titans. Big signing for them. And so let's see Denor Searcy getting an opportunity to start for the Titans makes as big an impact with them as he did with the Buffalo Bills. A.Q. Shipley going to the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals lose Paul Faneca, and so they needed to replace and replenish the interior of that offensive line. They go out and get A.Q. Shipley from the Indianapolis Colts. He'll compete to see if he can get some starter snaps with the Arizona Cardinals. Torrey Smith signs a big-time contract with the 49ers. We mentioned this yesterday when we broke down free agency right before it got underway, so no surprise there. Big-time contract for Torrey Smith with the San Francisco 49ers. Gives them the deep threat and the speed to take the top off the D they've been missing for quite some time. Justin Durant now moves on from Dallas to the Atlanta Falcons. This Falcons team looking to get tougher on the defensive side of football. They talked about getting tough last year, didn't quite work. Now they're trying to instill some more young, and really Justin Durant not as young as you would like him to be, but again, another tough, physical, smart linebacker that you can plug in the middle of your defense and help you get things done. He's now in the Atlanta Falcons. Sean Hill, we're moving on to a couple of quarterbacks. I mean, Sean Hill, just a consummate professional in this league. Backup, he is now in Minnesota going to back up Teddy Bridgewater, and it's a great place for him to be. Help mentor the young quarterback and as well give them someone that they can rely on in a pinch if anything were to happen to Teddy Bridgewater. You move on to Ryan Mallett. Here's a guy not changing teams, staying in Houston, getting an opportunity to potentially start. He's going to have to battle with Brian Hoyer. We'll talk about him a little bit later on, but in Houston, Ryan Mallett will have a legitimate shot to be the starting quarterback in Houston and be the signal caller for Bill O'Brien's offense. You go on to Shane Vereen. Here's a guy, unsung hero in New England, one of the best third down backs in the National Football League. And so that's going to be a huge loss for the Patriots, but the Patriots' loss is the New York Football Giants gain. They get themselves a quality back, a guy that can come in on third downs, catch the football, and tote the rock a little bit in that offense. We'll see what happens with him and how he fits into what they do in New York with that now all of a sudden pass-happy offense. You look at Julius Thomas, big get for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He signs on the dotted line to become a Jacksonville Jaguar. We talked about that previously, that he was probably going to end up in Jacksonville, and that he did. The Jaguars, much like the Raiders, started out free agency with a lot of money, but unlike the Raiders, the Jaguars were actually able to go out and get a lot of big-name free agents and really spend their money very wisely. This was one of their first gets of free agency, and a big one in Julius Thomas. You move on to Stephen Paya. Here's a guy coming from the Bears, had a career year, 6 sacks, now going to be playing defensive line for the Washington Redskins. Redskins looking to continue to bolster their defensive line. Stephen Paya will help them do exactly that. Brandon Graham, remember when the Eagles were dangling Brandon Graham out there as some kind of consolation prize? Hey, you missed out on a big time pass rusher, you missed out on somebody to play defensive end for you. Here's a guy that may be able to help you. All you got to do is fork over some type of pick and he's yours. You can have him for a hot ham and cheese sandwich. They were basically trying to give Brandon Graham away this time last year. All of a sudden, Brandon Graham plays some good football and he's back in Philadelphia with Chip Kelly and the Eagles. He's going to remain in the NFC East in Philadelphia with the Eagles. What a difference a year makes. Owen Daniels goes from Baltimore to the Denver Broncos, going to try to help Peyton Manning and that offense stay on track. They lose Julius Thomas, but they gain a veteran in Owen Daniels. He's going to now be a Denver Bronco. David Harris, to me, the heart and soul of this New York Jets defense. quietly, he is the leader of that defense. Make sure everyone's lined up. Make sure that nothing egregious happens in that front seven. And to me, without him, that Jets defense doesn't stay together. You can say what you want about the offense, you can say what you want about the secondary, but the front seven is normally intact. And I think David Harris is a huge part of that, and he's going to remain in New York with the Jets to continue playing good football for that franchise. Buster Screen joining the Jets franchise as a really good slot option. A lot of corners in New York with the Jets. We'll talk about that. I already talked about Revis. You know they've got D. Milliner coming off the injury. Add Buster Screen to the mix, and we'll talk about another Jet corner a little bit later on. That's a nice get coming over from the Browns. Buster Screen going to help them in the slot tremendously in New York with the Jets. Byron Maxwell talked about this yesterday. Just want to reiterate, he is a Philadelphia Eagle, big time contract, one of the best free agent corners on the market, going to be in Philadelphia with the Eagles. Brian Bulaga talked about him potentially leaving the Green Bay Packers, was looking for $7 to $8 million on the open market. Wasn't probably going to fetch that anywhere else. Packers ended up, kept their own, which is what they generally do in Green Bay. Brian Bulaga going to remain on that offensive line protecting Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Harry Douglas, no longer an Atlanta Falcon. They released him. He was signed by the Tennessee Titans. They can use all the help they can get out there at the skill positions with the Titans. So he's going to go in, see if he can't help jumpstart that wide receiving core. Jared Odrick, big time get for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Quietly, this is a big acquisition. One of the better defensive linemen that no one knows about in the National Football League. Jared Odrick is going to come over from Miami, where they spent a lot of money to go out and get Ndamukong Suh, and go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So now leaving the state of Florida, moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Big time get for the Jags. And again, I love the way the Jags spent their money in free agency. They got a lot of quality football players. And again, when you got a lot of money to spend, why not go out and spend it on young, talented football players like Jared Odrick? He's going to be the new Jacksonville Jaguar defensive lineman. So move on to Devon House, another Jacksonville Jaguar get, a young corner from Green Bay. Can't pay everyone in Green Bay, and so Devon House is the guy that slipped under the radar, and the Jacksonville Jaguars have scooped him up. Gus Bradley continues to build on a defense that's already got a lot of talented pieces already assembled in Jacksonville. Eric Winston going to remain in Cincinnati with the Bengals. He was a late addition to that roster last season, going to remain there. He played well, a guy that you can trust as a backup. He may even start at right tackle. We'll see what happens with Eric Winston. He is going to remain in Cincinnati. Virgil Green, solid tight end backup in Denver with the Broncos. A blocker, can catch the football, had a solid season last year for the Denver Broncos, going to remain in Denver with the Broncos. LaMarr Woodley moves on from Oakland to the Arizona Cardinals. There's not a lot left in the tank. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he does not even make this roster out of training camp. But right now, one-year deal for LaMarr Woodley in Arizona, and we can all connect the dots. We know why he's there. His old defensive coordinator from Pittsburgh is in Arizona, so he brings LaMarr Woodley along. But again, I don't think there's a lot left in that tank. You go to Jeremy Maclin, talked about him yesterday, possibly linking up with the Chiefs. That's exactly what he did. Huge contract for Jeremy Maclin. He is now a Kansas City Chief. You look at Tyvon Branch. He also is a new Kansas City Chief coming over from the Raiders. They were able to release him. He's been banged up the last 2 years, so he was able to sign on with another AFC West team. This time, he'll be donning the red and white of the Kansas City Chiefs. Kerry Williams moving on from the Eagles to the Seattle Seahawks. A long, rangy corner, which is exactly what the Seahawks like. Comes over from the Eagles. Thought he had a solid season. He is a guy that will get beat, but nonetheless, you put him in that defense, and he probably will flourish Another good get for the Seattle Seahawks, adding Kerry Williams to their secondary. Mike Iupati moves on from the 49ers to the Cardinals, stays in the NFC West division, signs on with the Cardinals, going to help bolster that offensive line. Dan Scooter going to the Jets. I remember when I thought he was just a special team standout, went to San Francisco, they gave him some snaps. He was able to prove not only can he play and be a physical 3-down linebacker, run with the best of them, do some things in the run game, but he also can get pressure on the quarterback. Very impressed with Dan Scooter, and now he's going to be a Jacksonville Jaguar. Another good signing for the Jaguars in free agency. Leonard Hankerson going to the Atlanta Falcons. Remember, Falcons cut bait with Harry Douglas, so they add Leonard Hankerson to their wide receiving core. Gives them a little bit more size with that group. You look at Dan Williams. This is a really good get for the Raiders. Quietly one of the better nose tackles in all of the National Football League. One of the best run-stuffing defensive linemen in the league in Dan Williams. Only a 2-down player, but he's going to give you some quality snaps when he's in the game. To me, one of their best signings of free agency thus far is Dan Williams from the Arizona Cardinals. He's now an Oakland Raider. Terrence Knighton is now a Washington Redskins, signed a 1-year deal. And so a lot of people were saying that he's out of shape, which is not new news. This is a guy that, when in shape, one of the better defensive tackles in the league. But the key is keeping him in shape. He should be able to whip himself into shape before training camp. We'll see what happens, but he is now a Washington Redskin. DeMarco Murray, this was the talk of free agency early on. Would he stay in Dallas? Would he go? Both sides, admittedly so, wanted to keep him in Dallas. Jerry Jones said he wanted to keep him in Dallas. DeMarco Murray admitted he wanted to stay in Dallas. The numbers just didn't match up. He wanted somewhere close to $8 million. Jerry wanted him to take something around 4 to 5. They couldn't find a middle ground. He ends up going to Philadelphia, stays in the division, going to see the Cowboys twice a year. That should be some entertaining television. Ryan Matthews, also a Philadelphia Eagles. This was a funny situation. DeMarco Murray had been rumored to go to possibly Oakland, possibly Jacksonville, maybe back to Dallas. Then the Eagles get into the fray a little later on. Ryan Matthews had already been rumored to have signed with the Eagles. Even the numbers had been released as to what the contract stated. He had not signed that contract though. DeMarco Murray shows up, he ends up signing, and Ryan Matthews still had not signed his deal. Looked like he was going to have to move on. Chip Kelly said, oh, no, we got space for you. Come on to Philadelphia. We can use all the bodies at the running back position we can get. Ryan Matthews now part of the chipification that is taking place in Philadelphia. He's the newest Philadelphia Eagle. Paul Faneca, talked about him earlier. Chiefs signed Paul Faneca away from the Arizona Cardinals, going to look to help bolster their interior offensive line. Again, a lot of moving parts, a lot of guys changing teams, and Chiefs lost a couple of their linemen last year, and so this is a chance for them to try to replenish their offensive line. Paul Faneca coming over from Arizona to the Kansas City Chiefs. O'Brien Schofield going to the Atlanta Falcons. Talked about the Falcons looking to bolster their pass rush. One of the worst pass rushing teams in the league last season. They've had trouble getting pressure on the quarterback since John Abraham has left Atlanta a couple years ago. So they've had trouble getting pressure on the quarterback. They're hoping O'Brien Schofield will come in and help apply pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Justin Forsett remains a Baltimore Raven. I think that's a great signing for the Ravens. It's a great signing for Justin Forsett. Hasn't had as much success anywhere else around the league, and goes to Baltimore, finds a home. Don't want to see him go elsewhere and find out that it's not the same. Don't think that his value is greater anywhere other than in Baltimore. So good to see him return to the Ravens. It's a good fit for both parties involved. He's going to run in Baltimore. Raheem Moore, now a Houston Texan. I think the Texans now have one of the better safety tandems in the league. You know, of course, Legion of Boom up there, and the Packers have a really good safety tandem as well. Now you can go ahead and throw the Texans in the mix with Raheem Moore and some of the younger guys like Glover Quinn and DJ Swearinger in the mix at safety. I think this is a team going in the right direction defensively. Now, if the offense could just catch up with what the Texans are doing, that's a good signing for the Texans, getting Raheem Moore, a young safety from the Denver Broncos. You look at Jordan Cameron, he's now a Miami Dolphin. His situation was a little confusing and complexing. There were reports that he was returning to Cleveland, looked like it was a done deal. All of a sudden he shows up in Miami, signs a deal there. So it was a lot of conflicting reports as to where he was going to end up. Finally finds out that he's in Miami. He's going to be a Dolphin. Looks like that spells the end of the line for Charles Clay in Miami. You look at Eddie Royal. He is now going to find a new home in Chicago. Was with the San Diego Chargers for the last couple of years. Before that, he was in Denver, and so he's now going to be in Chicago. We talked about the Bears needing to get more speed on their team, lacking a guy that could take the top off the defense. Eddie Royal can do that, and he's a lot quicker than fast, so he can work the slot as well. So gives them a little bit of return ability, gives them a guy that can work the slot and a guy that can get behind the defense. Good get for the Chicago Bears. Tyson Alualu is going to remain in Jacksonville. There's a young defense that's coming along. They're collecting a lot of pieces, and he was one of the guys that has always been consistent for them since drafting him in the first round out of Cal. He's going to remain in Jacksonville. Is Tyson Alualu. Roy Halou Jr. moving on from the Redskins to the Oakland Raiders. This was a solid signing for the Raiders. Gives them a guy that can catch the football out of the backfield, make some things happen there. And so he's a nice change of pace from the other backs that they have in the backfield like Latavius Murray. He's going to come in and provide a veteran presence and a guy that on third down can make some things happen for you. Roy Halou Jr. going back home to California to play for the Oakland Raiders. Adrian Claiborne now is going to be an Atlanta Falcon. Again, I talked about the Falcons looking to bolster their pass rush. He's going to help them do that. Coming over from Tampa Bay, Falcons know him very well. When healthy, this is a guy that can help them. They're looking for him to do exactly that. Brandon Browner, no longer a Patriot. Much like Revis, didn't want to pick up his option. He is now a New Orleans Saint. This is a big move for the Saints because you're looking for guys to help them be better on the defensive side of the football. Major letdown last year defensively. They can find a way to get someone opposite of Keenan Lewis, which you're hoping Browner becomes that guy. Maybe you can do some things up front with that front seven. We'll see what happens with Brandon Browner now in New Orleans. You look at Corey Redding. Thought he was going to retire as an Indianapolis Colt. Thought he played some of his best football last season. So he decides not done yet. Now he's going to play for the Arizona Cardinals. Remember, Cardinals lose Donnell Dockett, let him go, replace him with Corey Redding. We'll see what happens. Remember, Dockett didn't play most of last year, tore his ACL, so we'll see if Corey Redding can come in and help them in some areas because, again, you lose a guy like Dan Williams, no Darnell Dockett. Let's see if Corey Redding can come in and fill a void along that defensive line. You look at Bruce Carter, no longer a Cowboy. He's an athletic linebacker that, when healthy, can make some plays. He's going to Tampa Bay to see if he can fit in with that Tampa 2 shell that Lovie Smith likes to employ. We'll see if that athleticism and his ability to cover a lot of ground quickly will help him assimilate to that Tampa 2 cover defense in Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers. Brian Hoyer, Billy Ho is now a Houston Texan. So it's funny, you go from one backup journeyman quarterback to another, and in Billy Ho, Brian Hoyer now going to be competing to start in Houston with Ryan Mallett. And so it's funny, no more Ryan Fitzpatrick, which that was a nice experiment. That always is a nice experiment, but as always, he usually shows you why he's a career backup. And so now Brian Hoyer getting an opportunity. Really don't know what the Texans are doing at the quarterback position because I don't think Brian Hoyer is a starter either, but we'll see. He's getting an opportunity to compete. That's all he wanted. That's all he asked for. He's getting his chance in Houston with the Texans. Walter Thurman III is going to be a Philadelphia Eagle. He's making his tour around the NFC East. Last year he was with the Giants. Now he's with the Eagles. And so we'll see if Walter Thurman III helps that Eagles defense, as he is one of the premier slot corners in the entire National Football League. Look at James Carpenter. He is now going to be a New York Jet, second interior offensive lineman the Seattle Seahawks have lost this offseason. Remember, they traded Max Unger to the Saints in exchange for Jimmy Graham. And so now they lose James Carpenter to the Jets. That's a good get for the Jets. Going to help bolster that offensive line. Give Geno Smith a little bit more time. If he's going to succeed, going to need time to do so, and going to help open up some lanes for the running backs. Good get for the Jets as they help add to that offensive line. You move on to Curtis Lofton, veteran presence, a guy that doesn't miss time, coming over from the New Orleans Saints. He's now making his first trip over to the AFC, started his career with the Falcons, then moved on to the Saints. Now is going to be an Oakland Raider. This is a really good get for the Raiders. Still under the radar signing, not a guy that is going to garner a lot of headlines, but this is one of those glue guys that you need in your locker room that's going to help with a very young Oakland Raiders roster. Good signing for the Raiders with Curtis Lofton. Clint Bowling, guard for the Bengals, was going to get some interest on the open market, decided to stay in Cincinnati. He's going to remain with the Bengals. Antrell Roll signs a 3-year deal with the Chicago Bears. Great signing for the Bears. They have one of the most atrocious safety positions in the entire National Football League, and to get a guy like Antrell Roll instantly gives their safety position credibility. And so we'll see if that works out for them and helps them sort of clean up a big time problem area along their defense at the safety position with the addition of Antrell Roll. Antonio Cromartie is once again a Jet, and it seems like the Jets are just getting the band back together. Now they have Cromartie. Talked about Darrelle Revis, they added Buster Screen, and you still got D. Milliner. They went from having one of the worst corner situations in the league to having one of the best, just that fast. You move on to Jabal Shear. Here's one of those unsung heroes of the Cleveland Browns defense. Not a guy that you hear a lot about. A lot of late fans probably don't even know who he is, but here's a guy that gets pressure on the quarterback from that defensive end / outside linebacker position. He's now going to take his talents to New England to play for the Patriots. He's going to be a name that you hear a little bit more often now that he's going to be playing for the Patriots. He's a nice, under the radar signing that the Patriots are going to reap the benefits of. Still a young man as well. That's a good signing for the New England Patriots. Andre Johnson. Here's a big time free agent that we knew that this was coming. We knew he was trying to get out of Houston. I talked about this yesterday about him wanting to get out of Houston. They said, hey, go find a trade. He said, I don't want to find a trade. I want to be released. I want to pick my final destination. I want to play with a big time quarterback. I want a chance to win a Super Bowl. He gets released and he makes a beeline for Indy with the Colts. Andrew Luck and a team that was in the AFC Championship game just a season ago. He saw this team 2 times a year when he was a member of the Houston Texans, so he knows all about Andrew Luck and the Indianapolis Colts. He links up with his ex-U buddy Frank Gore in Indy. That's a big signing, and to me, the balance of power is shifting in the AFC in the favor of the Indianapolis Colts. Jacoby Jones was released prior to free agency by the Baltimore Ravens. He signs with the San Diego Chargers. Pernell McPhee, another gaping hole in the Chicago Bears defense, was filled with the signing of Pernell McPhee. Here's a guy coming over from Baltimore, had a career year, was stellar for the Ravens a season ago. The Ravens could not afford his services. He moves on. Young man, going into the prime of his career. Bears get him at a time when their defensive line was in shambles. Huge, huge signing for the Chicago Bears. Nate Allen moving on from Philadelphia to the Oakland Raiders. And let's talk about the Raiders here for a second. Look, Raiders haven't done much with their salary cap room. They had the most money going into free agency. Everybody expected big things from the Raiders. I talked to a couple of Raiders fans that were excited about the offseason. They thought they were getting sued. They thought they were going to be able to wrestle Randall Cobb away from Green Bay. They thought they were getting Julius Thomas. He's a California boy. His parents are Raiders season ticket holders. The Raiders thought they were going to go out and make a huge splash. If they didn't get Randall Cobb, they thought they could get Macklin. They thought they were going to be major players in free agency, and they really have struck out to this point. Now, I will say that they have made some solid signings. We don't know who Malcolm Smith is. We do know he was the Super Bowl MVP 2 years ago, but he did nothing last year because of the sheer talent in front of him in Seattle. Now he's getting an opportunity in Oakland. Let's see if he makes the most of it. We know that Rodney Hudson is a stellar center and will be a stellar player for the Raiders. I think that's a good signing. I love the Dan Williams signing. Curtis Lofton getting up there in age. I think he could be one of those London Fletcher types that ages well, can play well into his 30s and give you some solid production. But more importantly, I think he's another veteran presence like a Charles Woodson in that locker room. Is he going to move the earth in Oakland? Absolutely not. It's a solid signing. It's not a great one. Roy Halou Jr., same deal, veteran presence in the locker room, can help you on third downs, can do some things with the football in his hands. Is he going to change the fortunes of the Raiders and the balance of power in the AFC West? No, but he's another solid piece to the puzzle in Oakland. But none of these guys change or move the needle in Oakland. They were looking for one or two or maybe even three big splash signees. They just weren't able to do so. Meanwhile, Jacksonville, who had similar money moving into free agency, was able to go out and get Julius Thomas, was able to go out and get Jared Albert, was able to go out and get Jeremy Parnell, was able to get Devon House, were able to go out and get guys that you feel like can make a difference in Jacksonville. And so it begs the question, when are the Raiders going to be able to go out and get guys to come to Oakland? And I think the biggest thing, Julius Thomas said, I wanted to win. I wanted an opportunity to win. I wanted, of course, the state tax thing was huge with the Raiders. That's a big chunk of your money, 13 and some change percent of your money going to the state of California. Nobody wants to pay that. Uncle Sam's already reaching in your pocket as it is. So that was going to be tough for the Raiders to overcome. But also, Julius Thomas made mention of the facilities that they're state-of-the-art in Jacksonville. Meanwhile, Raiders are dealing with high school-like conditions in their facilities. It's time for the Raiders to get with the program, to catch up to the times, get a new facility, get a new stadium, and start to catch up to the rest of the National Football League. Finally, Henry Melton signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He started to revitalize his career last year with the Dallas Cowboys. We'll see if he continues the resurrection of his career from the ACL injury with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and that attacking style defense in the cover two of Lovie Smith. There you have it. Free agency as fast as I could give it to you. Man, that was a lot, but we covered a lot of ground. We got it out of the way. I am so exhausted by free agency. There's been so many things happening, but there are a lot more videos coming. Not a free agency. We're going to start turning our focus to the draft. Marcus Mariota, uninspiring pro day. What have we learned about those? You should have learned last year from Teddy Bridgewater that these pro days don't usually mean a heck of a lot. We saw him throw the football in the combine. We've seen the work and the body of work in college. Look, don't allow this to change your perspective on who Marcus Mariota is as a quarterback, okay? Saw it with Teddy Bridgewater, and this is not the end-all be-all. If you liked him going into the process, you should still like Marcus Mariota. So that's going to do it for me. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab room. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and everything in the National Football League. See you. Bit. There's plenty more where that came from. While you're here, subscribe to the channel. If you want more Louie T, be sure to follow me on Twitter at InTheLabRoom, or you can like the Facebook page at In the Lab Room. That's In the Lab Room on Facebook and at In the Lab Room on Twitter. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so.